The U.S. and its partners spent 20 years and nearly $90 billion to build the Afghan security forces. And there's plenty of blame to go around for its rapid collapse and the subsequent takeover of the country by the Taliban. Here to break down the causes for us is Jonathan Schroden. He's the director of the Countering Threats and Challenges program at CNA. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
The Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction put out a report recently that said this, quote, the single most important factor in the Afghan security forces collapse in August 2021 was the U.S. decision to withdraw military forces and contractors from Afghanistan through the signing of the U.S.-Taliban agreement in February of 20 under the Trump administration, followed by President Biden's withdrawal announcement in April of 21. Remind us, Jonathan, of what that U.S.-Taliban agreement entailed.
Sure. So there were three different parts to it, and there were a lot of different elements to the agreement, as you might imagine. But the two most significant parts were that the U.S. agreed to withdraw all of its combat forces and supporting contractors and other security personnel within 14 months of the signing of that agreement. And in exchange, the Taliban agreed to not allow Afghanistan to be used by terrorist groups, including al-Qaeda, which was named specifically in the agreement, to use Afghanistan as a platform for terrorist attacks against other countries.
So as you said, part of that agreement is the reduction of U.S. support to Afghan security forces. How did that actually manifest on the ground?
Sure. So it played out very quickly, certainly a lot more quickly than the Afghan security forces would have liked or were prepared to handle. So one telling statistic that the Special Inspector General's report calls out is the number of airstrikes that the U.S. was providing as support to the Afghan security forces. So the report says in the roughly 10 months after the agreement was signed in February of 2020, the U.S. conducted about 800 airstrikes in support of Afghan security forces on the ground. In the 14 months prior to the signing of the agreement, the U.S. had conducted over 8,000 airstrikes in support of those forces. So while the timelines aren't similar, right, roughly an order of magnitude decline in the amount of air support that the U.S. was providing to those forces once that agreement was signed.
Well, another factor that's stated in the report was that the U.S. never built Afghanistan's security forces to be self-sustaining. What was the problem there?
Yeah, so the U.S. military faced a constant balancing act that I would argue, have argued, and the Special Inspector General concludes that they didn't balance very well, which was the desire on one hand to get after the Taliban, right, to go after the enemy, to be aggressive in doing that, and then over time to transition the mission for that to the Afghan security forces and to enable them to aggressively go after the Taliban on the one hand, but on the other hand, recognizing that you needed to build long-term sustainability into these forces, and that entailed things like logistics and personnel management, right? The less operationally focused elements of a security force, and the U.S. consistently prioritized the operational parts, getting after the enemy, over the sustainability parts, and we saw the effects of that eventually once the U.S. withdrew.
You know, the Taliban also knew how to exploit the weaknesses of the Afghan security forces and to wage psychological warfare on them.
They did, and they did this very, very well throughout their campaign. They, at local levels, had networks that they leveraged to get in touch with local Afghan security force commanders and to offer them enticement for surrender, so money or amnesty on the one hand, and to threaten them with consequences, and most notably threats against their family members if they didn't surrender on the other hand. So that was one very powerful element of that they used. Another was very, very effective use of social media and highlighting their victories on the battlefield, along with a narrative that their victory was inevitable and it was only a matter of time. So Afghan security forces should surrender immediately and get the best deal that they could.
So, Jonathan, what's really new in the SIGAR's report here that we didn't already know?
I think the one thing that is new is their identification of the U.S. decision to withdraw as the, as you said, quote, single most important factor. The factors they call out, the panoply of factors, I think were fairly well known. but their prioritization of that single factor was new and is frankly something that I disagree with. I think the 6 main factors that they call out, in my view, are all equally important. And it's neither fair nor helpful to say that the U.S. is primarily to blame just because of its decision to withdraw.
So finally, Jonathan, do you think that the Defense Department has taken the failures that they are responsible for to heart and have learned from them?
The short answer to that is no. There has not been much in the way of appetite currently from within the Pentagon to really dig into the lessons of what happened in Afghanistan and to make lasting institutional changes as a result. I am hopeful that the Afghanistan War Commission that the Congress has established and which is in the process of being stood up will serve as a driving mechanism for those institutional changes, which we so desperately need in the wake of the colossal failure that was Afghanistan.
All right. Well, Jonathan, I appreciate you being on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.